Imagine for a second, just right now, that everything you see, touch, and feel, I mean, the device you're listening to this on, the floor beneath your feet, the air in the room.
Even the cells in your own body.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine that all of it is just a carefully constructed fiction, a biological illusion built by your brain for one single pragmatic purpose, which is just to keep you alive long enough to reproduce.
Right.
And if you strip all of that evolutionary filtering away, if you pull back the curtain on reality at the most fundamental microscopic level, you are nothing more than a symphony of vibrating strings.
It's wild. It completely shatters our intuitive understanding of the world, doesn't it? I mean, we spend our entire lives trusting our senses implicitly.
You really do.
You assume that your eyes and ears are providing this perfectly transparent window to objective truth. But when you look through the uncompromising lens of theoretical physics, that solid, dependable reality just evaporates.
It's just gone.
Yeah. And you're left staring at a universe that is infinitely more bizarre and honestly vastly more beautiful than the human brain was ever wired to comprehend.
It really is beautiful. And today we want to take you on a journey into that bizarre, beautiful, underlying reality. We are pulling from a fascinating, deeply expansive interview featured on The Diary of a CEO with Dr. Michio Kaku.
A true legend in the field.
Unbelievable mind. He's a man who has spent, the last 71 years of his life trying to solve a puzzle that literally killed Albert Einstein. Dr. Kaku is one of the founding pioneers of string field theory, and his ultimate mission is to find the theory of everything.
Which is no small task.
No, not at all. And our goal today is to mirror that ambition for you. We're going to start at the absolute bottom layer of existence, those subatomic vibrations, and then zoom all the way out to the mind-bending architecture of an 11-dimensional multiverse.
It gets weird very quickly.
It really does. And along the way, we have to look at the terrifying proximity of biological immortality, the world-breaking threats of quantum computing, and just distill what all of this profound physics actually means for your everyday life.
Right. Because to even begin to grasp where humanity is going or, what might be watching us from the stars, you really have to understand what we are fundamentally built from, the absolute base layer. And for Dr. Kaku, this obsession started when he was just 8 years old. That's a striking origin story, actually. He's a kid, he's looking at the morning newspaper, and the front page announces that a great scientist has died.
Just a normal morning in the 1950s, right?
Exactly. But the article specifically mentions that this scientist's final project, this theory of everything, was left unfinished on his desk.
And that scientist was Einstein.
It was Einstein. He spent the last 30 years of his life essentially chasing a ghost.
Yeah, he wanted an equation, maybe no more than 1 inch long, that would allow humanity to basically read the mind of God.
And an 8-year-old Kaku looks at that unfinished business and decides right there to just take up the mantle.
Which is so audacious for an 8-year-old. But let me stop you there, because theory of everything sounds like, I don't know, science fiction magic. What does a 1-inch equation actually do in practical terms?
Well, think about how fragmented our current understanding of physics is, right? We have 4 fundamental forces that dictate literally everything in the cosmos.
Okay.
First, you have gravity, which is the macro force holding planets in orbit and keeping our feet on the ground. Second, electromagnetism, which is light, radio waves, and, the force powering every single piece of technology we own.
Sure.
Then you have the strong and weak nuclear forces, which operate on an infinitesimally small scale to hold the nucleus of an atom together, and they govern radioactive decay.
Right. And the problem, as I understand it, is that these forces kind of hate each other mathematically. Like, we have the standard model of particle physics, which brilliantly explains the tiny stuff, the electromagnetism and the nuclear forces.
It works perfectly.
But when you try to plug gravity into that exact same mathematical framework, the equations just break down and spit out infinity.
Oh, the math completely collapses.
Yeah.
General relativity, which is Einstein's theory of gravity, envisions the universe as a smooth, continuous fabric of space-time.
Like a trampoline.
Exactly. And a heavy object, like a star, gently warps that smooth fabric. But quantum mechanics, which governs the other 3 forces, says the universe is chunky. It's quantized.
Chunky. I like that word for it.
Yeah, it's a jittery, chaotic, boiling foam of probabilities at the quantum level. So if you try to combine a perfectly smooth fabric with a boiling, chaotic foam, the math gives you infinities.
Which is bad.
It's terrible. It's a physicist's way of saying you've done something terribly fundamentally wrong.
Which brings us to where the illusion of our reality really starts to crack. Because in high school chemistry, we're all taught that matter is made of atoms, and those atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons.
Right, the little solar system model.
Yeah, we visualize them as little solid marbles, point particles. But string theory argues that this marble model is the exact reason the math is breaking down.
Because if you treat an electron as an infinitely small point, the gravitational force at that exact point becomes infinitely strong, and it just tears the equations apart.
Okay, so how does string theory fix that?
Well, string theory steps in and says, what if the fundamental building block isn't a zero-dimensional dot? What if it's a one-dimensional, incredibly tiny vibrating loop of string?
Loop.
Yeah. By stretching that point out into a string, you smear out the force. You eliminate the infinities, and suddenly, beautifully, the math works.
But wait, why does the shape of it matter so much? A string versus a dot? I mean, I struggle to see how a tiny rubber band solves the mysteries of the universe.
It matters because of resonance and frequency. You see, in the middle of the 20th century, physicists started smashing atoms together and discovering hundreds of new subatomic particles.
Right, the particle zoo.
Exactly. It wasn't just protons and electrons anymore. It was muons, gluons, neutrinos, Higgs bosons. Dr. Kaku points out the complete absurdity of this.
Nature doesn't like being complicated.
No. Mother Nature is highly efficient. She wouldn't arbitrarily create a foundational reality based on hundreds of completely distinct, unrelated particles.
I see. It's too chaotic. It's like opening the hood of a car and finding thousands of completely unique, custom-made screws instead of just a standardized set.
Precisely. It makes no sense. But if the fundamental building block is a single type of string, the chaos just vanishes. The variety we see isn't a variety of fundamental objects. It's a variety of vibrations.
Okay.
Right? If a string vibrates in one specific frequency, it manifests in our reality as an electron. If it twists and vibrates at a different harmonic, it manifests as a quark.
So all of these seemingly distinct subatomic particles are just different notes being played on the exact same foundational instrument.
You've got it.
I really want to lean into that musical analogy because I think it helps ground this. Imagine the entire universe is just a cosmic cello.
A beautiful image.
Right. The string is identical everywhere. But depending on how the universe plucks that string, you get a different note. So an electron is an A flat, a photon of light is a C sharp, a gluon is an F.
Exactly.
Mother Nature didn't painstakingly invent 100 different instruments. She just learned how to play 100 different chords on one string.
And that framework, that musical framework, explains why we spend billions of dollars building machines like the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva.
The ultimate string plucker.
Basically, yeah. You have this massive 17-mile circular tunnel buried underground where we use these powerful electromagnets cooled to near absolute zero.
Just to get things cold enough to work.
Right. And we accelerate particles to 99.99% the speed of light. Then we just smash them into each other.
So violent.
It is. We are essentially plucking the strings violently to see what new notes ring out. We want to categorize the debris to document every possible vibration the string can make.
But Kaku throws a massive curveball into this categorizing effort, right? Because we've spent decades documenting the notes we can hear with our multi-billion-dollar atom smashers. But he points to the greatest mystery in modern astronomy, which is dark matter.
Oh, this is fascinating.
This is an invisible substance that completely surrounds our Milky Way and other galaxies. It doesn't emit light, it doesn't reflect light, it doesn't block light.
Completely invisible.
Yet, it has massive gravitational weight. It is the literal invisible scaffolding holding galaxies together. And Kaku suggests that dark matter isn't some exotic alien substance. It might just be a higher octave of string vibration.
Yeah, the mathematics of string theory naturally predict these higher energetic states.
Yeah.
The lowest vibrations of the string create the matter we interact with daily. The protons, the light, the atoms making up your body.
The stuff we can see and touch.
Right. But the math insists there should be higher harmonics, higher octaves of vibration that simply do not interact with the electromagnetic spectrum.
And because they don't interact with electromagnetism.
They are completely invisible to us and our current instruments.
Yeah.
We only detect them through their gravitational footprint.
Let me push back on that, or rather, let's follow that logic to its extreme. If I play a really high note on a cello, a note so high that a human ear can't perceive it, the wood of the cello still vibrates.
Okay.
A dog might still hear it. So if dark matter is just a higher octave of reality playing out in the exact same physical space as us, What happens if humanity eventually invents a detector capable of hearing it?
That's the golden question.
Right. Do we just double our map of the universe, or does that fundamentally rewrite the entire song?
It would completely rewrite our understanding of the physical world. I mean, if we could interact with dark matter, which, by the way, makes up about 27% of the universe compared to the measly 5% that makes up normal matter, we would unlock energy sources and physical interactions that currently seem like pure magic.
Magic. Yeah.
But connecting this back to Dr. Kaku's pursuit of that one-inch equation, the implications go even further. If we finally write down the theory of everything, if we fully understand the underlying code of these strings and how they generate all four forces,
We transition from being passive listeners of the cosmic symphony to something entirely different.
we become the composer.
We become the composers. That is dizzying to think about.
It is. If you understand the fundamental generative code of reality, theoretically, you become a master of matter and energy itself. It is the absolute ultimate endpoint of physical science.
It's just staggering. But, if that microscopic layer, the strings, is the foundation, how do those strings organize on a macro level?
We have to zoom out.
Right. Let's zoom out. How do you get from a vibrating microscopic loop to a supermassive black hole? If the microuniverse is a symphony, what does the concert hall look like?
Well, to map the architecture of the cosmos, we have to rewind the clock all the way back to the beginning, to the Big Bang, roughly 13.8 billion years ago.
And the only reason we know this happened isn't because of abstract math, it's because of direct observation. Kaku uses this brilliant visual to explain it.
The balloon.
The balloon. Imagine taking a deflated balloon and drawing dots all over it with a marker. As you blow up the balloon, the rubber stretches, and every single dot moves further away from every other dot.
Yes.
When astronomers look deep into the night sky, that is exactly what they observe. The galaxies aren't just drifting through space, the actual space between them is expanding, stretching, pushing everything apart.
Which logically dictates that if you play the tape in reverse, everything in the universe must have once been condensed into a single, unimaginably dense hot point before it rapidly expanded.
But string theory attempts to answer the questions that the standard Big Bang theory simply cannot. Like, what caused that initial point to expand? And what exactly is it expanding into?
Right.
That is the question that always breaks my brain. When you say Big Bang, I picture a stick of dynamite exploding inside an empty room.
Most people do.
But before the Big Bang, there was no room. There was no space, no time. So how can something expand if there is literally nothing for it to expand into?
This is where string theory demands we expand our spatial awareness. The mathematics of string theory simply do not work in our standard 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time.
The math breaks again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the strings to have enough room to vibrate in all the ways necessary to create the universe we see, the math requires an 11-dimensional hyperspace.
11 dimensions. I mean, I can barely parallel park in 3. How do we even conceptualize that?
You really can't visualize it in the traditional sense, but you can understand its structure. String theorists propose that the extra dimensions are curled up and compacted at a scale so microscopic, the Planck length, that we just can't perceive them.
So they're
Hidden in plain sight. But the overall arena of existence is an 11-dimensional bulk. And within this hyperspace, our specific massive universe is just one tiny bubble.
a single bubble in a cosmic bubble bath.
Exactly, the metaphor Kaku employs. The 11-dimensional vacuum isn't truly empty. It is highly volatile, frothing with quantum energy.
Bubbling away.
Yeah, tiny bubble universes are constantly popping into existence. Most of them immediately collapse back into nothingness. But occasionally, a bubble gets enough initial energy that it doesn't pop. It rapidly inflates.
And that inflation.
That sudden, dramatic inflation of a single bubble is what we experience from the inside as a Big Bang.
So our entire universe, the billions of light years, the trillions of galaxies, everything that has ever existed to us is just the inside surface of one expanding soap bubble floating in an 11-dimensional void.
Yes. And there are countless other bubbles doing the exact same thing. A multiverse.
A multiverse.
Yeah.
And within our specific bubble, the dominant architect shaping the galaxies is gravity. But to understand the extreme cosmic structures Kaku talks about, we really have to discard the Newtonian idea of gravity.
Right, the apple falling on the head.
Yeah. Gravity is not an invisible magnetic tether pulling objects together. As Einstein proved, gravity is geometry.
Geometry. Okay, let's bring back the trampoline. Think of space like a giant taut trampoline. If you place a heavy bowling ball representing a star like our sun right in the middle, its mass forces the fabric of the trampoline to sag, creating a deep depression.
A gravity well.
Right. If you take a smaller marble, like the Earth, and roll it across the trampoline, it won't travel in a straight line. It gets caught in the curvature created by the bowling ball, and it rolls in a continuous circle along the inner edge of that depression.
So the Earth isn't being pulled by the sun. It is simply following the natural curve of the space around it. The heavier the object, the deeper the depression in the fabric of space. Which takes us to the absolute extreme of that physics, which is black holes.
Oh, black holes are terrifying. A black hole is formed when a massive star exhausts its nuclear fuel and just collapses in on itself.
It crushes itself.
Completely.
Yeah.
The core condenses so intensely that it creates a localized depression in the fabric of space that is practically infinitely deep and infinitely steep.
And Kaku explains this through the concept of escape velocity.
Yes.
Every celestial body has a speed limit you have to break to escape its spatial curvature. So to leave Earth and go to space, a rocket has to hit roughly 7 miles per second.
Which is incredibly fast.
Right. That is the raw speed required to climb out of Earth's gravitational dent.
But the depression created by a black hole is so profound that the escape velocity at its edge exceeds 186,000 miles per second.
Speed of light.
The speed of light. And since nothing in the universe can travel faster than the speed of light, nothing can climb out of that depression.
It's a trap.
Once you cross the event horizon, that point of no return, the curvature of space is pulling you inward faster than light can travel outward. You are permanently removed from the observable universe.
It is so eerie. But I'm trying to visualize the bottom of that depression. If matter falls in, where does it go? Standard physics says it just gets crushed into an infinitely dense singularity, a dead end.
A literal dead end, yeah.
But Kaku speculates that black holes might not be cosmic garbage disposals. He suggests they might actually be gateways.
If the warping of space is extreme enough, it's theorized that the fabric at the bottom of the black hole could stretch to the point of tearing or puncturing.
Ripping a hole in the trampoline.
Yes, and potentially connecting to another point in space-time.
A wormhole.
Yes, an Einstein-Rosen bridge. A theoretical tunnel through the 11-dimensional hyperspace connecting two distant regions of our universe, or perhaps even connecting our bubble universe to an entirely different bubble in the multiverse.
Which, honestly, we are going to need if we ever plan on exploring the galaxy. Kaku noted that with our current propulsion technology, the Saturn V rockets that took us to the moon, it would take 70,000 years just to reach Alpha Centauri, our closest neighboring star.
70,000 years.
70,000 years to reach the front porch of our galactic neighborhood. Without bending space and taking a shortcut through a wormhole, humanity is essentially quarantined to this solar system.
Quarantined is a very good word for it.
But returning to the bubble bath concept for a moment, if our universe is a bubble that is actively expanding, and there are other bubbles out there also expanding, isn't a collision inevitable? What happens if our universe bumps into another one?
Cosmologists have actively searched for evidence of this. The theory is that if our expanding universe collided with a neighboring universe early in its history, the impact would have left a shock wave.
Like a bruise.
Exactly. A massive bruise on the cosmic microwave background radiation, the thermal afterglow of the Big Bang. We haven't definitively proven such a bruise exists yet. But the mathematics of a frothing multiverse absolutely allow for bubble collisions, or for one universe to butt off and birth a new one.
It's just an overwhelming scale. We're discussing 11-dimensional voids, dark matter octaves, and spatial gateways. But this forces a really uncomfortable realization, and it brings us to the next profound theme of Kaku's work.
The illusion.
Yes. If reality is this wildly exotic, high-dimensional quantum symphony, why is my daily experience so mundane? Why does my reality just look like a 3-dimensional living room, a commute, and a grocery store?
Why don't we see the magic?
Exactly. Why don't we perceive any of this underlying majesty?
Well, because your perception is an evolutionary tool, not a scientific instrument. Dr. Kaku points out that what you probably refer to as reality is actually a highly curated, remarkably tiny partial fiction constructed by your brain.
A biological lie.
A very necessary one. Our sensory organs did not evolve to understand string theory or map the multiverse. They evolved on the African savanna for one explicit purpose, to avoid predators and find food.
Just survival.
That's it. Perceiving objective reality would have actually been an evolutionary disadvantage. It's too much information.
To make that concrete, just look at the electromagnetic spectrum. Right now, in the room you are sitting in, you are being bombarded by realities you are completely blind to.
Oh, absolutely.
There are Wi-Fi signals, radio waves, infrared heat signatures, ultraviolet light, and cosmic rays passing straight through your body. You only see a tiny razor-thin sliver of that spectrum visible light.
And if you suddenly had the visual receptors of a honeybee, you would look at a flower and see elaborate, glowing ultraviolet landing pads that were entirely invisible to you a second ago.
It's a completely different world.
If you possess the biological sonar of a bat or whale, you would construct a highly detailed 3D topographical map of the space around you using only the reflection of sound waves.
So you, your dog, the spider on the wall, and the bat flying outside are all occupying the exact same physical coordinates in space, but you are all living in entirely different, biologically siloed realities.
We are blind to each other's worlds.
We're like people staring through a tiny, dust-covered keyhole into a massive neon-lit, chaotic stadium, pointing at our tiny patch of grass and confidently declaring, "This is the entire universe."
And this filtering process doesn't just block information out. It actively invents information that isn't there, just to keep you safe. Dr. Kaku refers to this as the tiger in the forest evolutionary theory.
I found this deeply fascinating because it explains so much of human psychology. If you are an early hominid walking through the jungle and you hear a sudden rustling in the bushes, your brain doesn't stop to scientifically analyze the wind patterns.
Of course not. You die.
Right. Your brain instantly generates a massive, terrifying assumption. There's a tiger in the bush and it's going to eat me.
Immediate panic.
9 times out of 10, it's just the wind. Your brain has actively created a false reality, a phantom threat. But that 1 time out of 10, when it actually is a tiger, that paranoia saves your life.
We are the genetic descendants of the paranoid apes. The apes who were calm, objective, and waited for empirical evidence of the tiger were eaten and removed from the gene pool.
The calm ones didn't make.
No. We survived precisely because our brains were hardwired to project agency, intention, and threats onto the unknown.
So we are biologically programmed to invent ghosts in the shadows.
Yeah.
And Kaku extrapolates this biological hardwiring into a sociological framework.
This is where it gets really interesting.
As humans evolved, our brains grew larger and we became highly intelligent. But that intelligence introduced a new threat. Our survival mechanisms had to shift from dealing with physical tigers to dealing with social disintegration.
Because when you look at a pack of wolves or a troop of gorillas, the social hierarchy is brute force. The alpha male leads because he can physically dominate challengers. But as humans developed advanced cerebral cortexes and complex language, raw strength was no longer enough. We began to reason, to argue, and to question authority.
A subordinate could ask, "Why should I follow you? I can build a better trap. I'm smarter than you."
Exactly. And a tribe of highly intelligent, fiercely rational, constantly bickering individuals is a tribe that fractures.
And a fractured tribe in the wild dies.
Therefore, Kaku views the emergence of religion and the concept of an ultimate divine authority as a highly effective, perhaps entirely necessary, evolutionary social technology.
Social glue.
Yes. It served as the sociological glue that held highly intelligent, argumentative apes together.
If the tribal leader says, "You must obey these laws not because I can beat you up, but because an invisible, all-powerful creator commands it and will punish you eternally if you defy them," well, it stops the bickering.
It creates an unchallengeable axiom.
It unites the tribe under a shared belief system, allowing them to cooperate in massive numbers, regardless of whether that belief system aligns with the objective physics of the universe.
It provided cohesion and, crucially, it provided meaning.
Wow.
Kaku argues that this obsession with meaning and the future is the defining characteristic of human consciousness. He refers to the human brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, as a biological time machine.
I love the thought experiment he uses for this. He says, "Go home tonight and ask your dog what it did yesterday." The dog will just wag its tail. Ask it what its 5-year plan is. The dog will just bark.
They're very present.
Right. An animal's consciousness is trapped in an eternal present, reacting only to immediate stimuli, hunger, danger, warmth.
But humans,
But a human is constantly time traveling. We sit in traffic and simulate entirely hypothetical future scenarios. What will happen if I say this at the meeting tomorrow? How will this decision affect my retirement in 30 years?
we live in simulations.
We simulate realities that haven't happened yet to evaluate the consequences of our actions.
But that incredible evolutionary gift, the ability to simulate the future, comes with a heavy burden. We realize our own mortality. We realize the universe is vast and uncaring.
And so our consciousness scrambles to assign narrative and meaning to a cosmos that fundamentally is just vibrating strings and bubbling vacuums.
Which raises a really dark, difficult question about science itself. If our brains are biologically rigged to invent tigers in the bush when we hear the wind,
Yeah.
and if we are genetically predisposed to invent overarching belief systems just to keep our society from fracturing, are we even psychologically equipped to handle the objective truths of physics?
Whoa.
Or will we always unconsciously project our human fears, our need for narrative, and our paranoia onto the unknown?
It is the ultimate bottleneck of science. We are trying to decode the 11-dimensional geometry of the multiverse
Wow.
using a biological processor that was optimized for throwing spears at antelope.
That's a huge mismatch.
It requires immense discipline to trust the cold mathematics over our own intuition because our intuition is fundamentally designed to deceive us for the sake of survival.
It's deeply humbling.
It really is. It strips away the arrogance of human perception. And if our perception of reality is that flawed, that narrow, it begs the ultimate question. What entirely different modes of existence are we completely missing?
What's out there?
Exactly. If we turn our gaze away from our own flawed brains and look back up at the night sky, are we alone? Let's transition to the statistical realities of extraterrestrial life, UFOs, and the zoo hypothesis.
Well, when a physicist like Dr. Kaku looks at the probability of alien life, it isn't a matter of belief. It is a matter of sheer statistical inevitability. The numbers are too overwhelming to support the idea that Earth is entirely unique.
Just in our local neighborhood, the Milky Way galaxy, there are roughly 100 billion to 400 billion stars.
A staggering number.
And we now know, thanks to the Kepler telescope, that almost every single one of those stars has planets orbiting it. Billions of them are in the habitable Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, where liquid water can exist.
So the probability of life initiating somewhere in that vast expanse approaches 100%. However, the sheer vastness of space also acts as a profound filter.
The quarantine again.
Right. As we established, it would take humanity 70,000 years to reach the closest star with conventional rockets. Therefore, if a civilization has managed to cross that vast gulf and reach Earth, they are not just slightly more advanced than us.
They aren't just 50 years ahead, making slightly better smartphones.
No. They would be hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years ahead.
Yeah.
They would have had to conquer the energy requirements necessary to warp space-time. They would operate on a level of physics we can barely conceptualize.
And astronomers are actively looking for the signatures of civilizations operating at that godlike scale. Kaku points to a highly controversial but very real astronomical observation regarding a distant star.
Tabby star.
Yeah. Astronomers noticed that the light output of this specific star was dropping in a wildly unnatural way.
See, typically, when a planet passes in front of its host star, a transit, it blocks a tiny fraction of the star's light. For scale, if Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system, passed directly between a distant observer and our sun, it would only block about 1% of the sun's light.
But the star Kaku references was experiencing massive erratic dips in brightness, sometimes dropping by an astonishing 20%.
20% is massive.
And it was happening over months and years. For a star's light to drop by 20%, you aren't talking about a planet getting in the way. You're talking about an object or a swarm of objects of incomprehensible size blocking the starlight.
While there are natural theories, like massive chaotic dust clouds, one legitimate astrophysical hypothesis discussed is the concept of a megastructure.
A Dyson sphere.
Yes, an alien civilization millions of years ahead of us would have practically insatiable energy demands. The logical endgame of energy production is to build a massive array of solar collectors, a Dyson sphere or a massive orbiting lattice, entirely encapsulating their host star to harvest its total energy output.
The idea that we might be looking through a telescope and seeing the shadows of an alien power plant is staggering.
It really is.
But that's evidence light years away. What about evidence close to home? This naturally leads to the recent mainstreaming of UFO phenomena. In 2020, the U.S. government formally declassified or released 160 videos and reports of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, encountered by military pilots.
And, to be clear, we aren't discussing the politics of the release. The factual release of those documents simply provided physicists like Dr. Kaku with raw, verified sensor data that had been locked away for decades.
Finally, something real to look at.
Exactly. For a long time, the scientific community shunned the UFO topic because the data was poor, blurry photographs and anecdotal stories. The military often encouraged the stigma to mask the testing of classified aerospace technology.
Keep people looking the other way.
Right. But the declassification of radar data, infrared tracking, and verified pilot testimony changed the landscape. It gave scientists actual metrics to analyze.
But Kaku maintains a very strict, rigorous scientific threshold. He breaks alien encounters into three categories. A close encounter of the first kind is visual. You see lights in the sky, maybe you get it on video.
Okay.
A close encounter of the second kind requires tangible, physical evidence, a piece of exotic metallurgy, a crashed craft, biological material. And the third kind is direct, undeniable contact. Shaking hands, essentially.
And Kaku notes that despite the declassified videos, we are strictly marooned at the first kind.
Just looking at the sky.
Yeah, we have intriguing videos of things we can't explain, but not a single piece of universally verified physical evidence. He is careful to point out that 95% of all sightings can be comfortably explained by known phenomena, weather anomalies, atmospheric optics, radar glitches, or classified drones.
But it is the remaining 5% that gives a physicist pause. The declassified military videos show objects performing maneuvers that fundamentally violate the known laws of aerodynamics and propulsion.
They don't have exhaust plumes, they don't have wings, and yet they're recorded dropping from 80,000 feet to sea level in a matter of seconds.
Which is physically impossible for us.
They change direction instantaneously while traveling at hypersonic speeds.
And this leads to Kaku's most fascinating deduction. When pressed on what these objects could be, if they are indeed extraterrestrial, he points out a fatal biological flaw in the popular mythology.
Oh, the gray aliens.
Right. These crafts are almost certainly not manned by biological entities.
The G-force problem.
Yes. If an object is traveling at 10,000 miles per hour and performs an instantaneous 90-degree turn, the resulting gravitational forces would instantly turn any organic material inside into soup.
Pure liquid.
Bone, tissue, organs, they would be completely liquefied. No biological creature evolved to withstand those forces.
So it's completely illogical to assume there were fragile gray aliens sitting in the cockpit pulling levers. If these crafts are real, they are robotic. They are AI probes.
Which makes perfect sense when you look at our own space program. When humanity explores a hostile environment like Mars, we don't send fragile meat sacks who need water, oxygen, and radiation shielding. We send the Perseverance rover. We send a machine.
If a civilization is exploring the galaxy, they aren't sending organic bodies. They are sending self-repairing, highly durable, autonomous AI.
But this logic invites a deeply unsettling psychological question. If the Earth is being visited by robotic probes from a civilization millions of years older than us, why haven't they said hello?
Why the silence?
Yeah. Why is there no grand arrival, no attempt to share technology or establish diplomatic relations?
Kaku introduces the zoo hypothesis to explain the silence. It is both comforting and deeply humiliating.
Humiliating is the right word.
He says, look, if they wanted to strip mine our planet or destroy us, they would have done it instantly. The fact that we're still breathing means they aren't hostile.
That's the comforting part.
But they also aren't talking to us. Why? Because consider how humans behave when we go to the zoo. You walk up to the monkey enclosure and you observe them. You might find their social dynamics fascinating. But you don't climb into the cage and attempt to initiate diplomatic relations with the alpha chimpanzee.
You don't try to teach them math?
No, the intelligence gap is too wide. There's no meaningful conversation to be had. You just watch them peacefully and let them live in their ignorance.
It radically reframes human history. We view ourselves as the pinnacle of creation, the masters of the earth. But the zoo hypothesis suggests we might just be a curiosity, a protected nature reserve.
We're just the wildlife.
It makes me wonder, if Earth is just a cosmic zoo, does that make humanity the exotic prize silverback gorilla that everyone comes to see? Or are we just the irrelevant ants crawling around in the dirt at the bottom of the enclosure, completely ignored while the aliens study the tectonic plates?
It's a humbling thought.
Either way, the cage door is currently closed. But humanity is accelerating at a terrifying pace. Which brings us to the next massive leap in this deep dive, the future of humanity. We are actively developing technologies that might allow us to evolve out of the zoo enclosure.
But they are technologies that could also completely destroy the species.
Yeah. Let's look at the looming reality of biological immortality, quantum threats, and merging with machines.
When Dr. Kaku evaluates human progress, he urges us to zoom out. If you watch the news daily, human history looks like a series of unending disasters. But if you look at it decade by decade, the acceleration is breathtaking.
It really is.
In a little over a century, we went from horse-drawn carriages to splitting the fundamental atom, mapping the human genome, and building reusable rockets.
And the breakthroughs on the immediate horizon sound indistinguishable from magic. The most profound of these is the conquest of biological aging. Immortality. It has been the stuff of myth and alchemy forever, but Kaku says it is now a grounded bioengineering problem that we are on the verge of solving. It all centers on a biological timer inside our cells.
To understand aging, you have to look at the structure of our DNA. At the end of every chromosome, there are protective caps called telomeres.
The standard analogy is that they are like the little plastic aglets at the end of a shoelace that keep the shoelace from fraying.
Exactly. Every time a human cell divides to replace old or damaged tissue, that telomere gets slightly shorter. The plastic tip wears down.
And eventually,
After a certain number of divisions, known as the Hayflick limit, usually around 50 divisions, the telomere is entirely depleted. The chromosome begins to fray, the cell can no longer replicate cleanly, it becomes senescent.
and that's what aging is.
Yes. This accumulated cellular failure is what we experience as aging. Our skin sags, our organs weaken, and eventually our body fails. It is a biological countdown clock ticking away from the moment of birth.
But the breakthrough is that scientists discovered an enzyme called telomerase. And telomerase essentially rebuilds the aglet. It adds length back to the telomere.
Which is incredible.
If a cell is exposed to telomerase, the countdown clock freezes. The cell can divide infinitely without degrading. It achieves biological immortality.
It sounds like the Holy Grail. But Mother Nature is cruel. While scientists know how telomerase works, they discovered that the most efficient, ruthless user of telomerase in the human body is not healthy tissue.
It's cancer.
Yes. Cancer cells are biologically immortal. They have hijacked the telomerase mechanism. They don't respect the Hayflick limit. They just keep dividing, replicating, and growing eternally.
Which is precisely why they form massive tumors that ultimately crush the host organism. Cancer is a glitch of immortality.
Exactly. So the grand medical challenge of our era, the literal key to eternal life, is a terrifying tightrope walk. We have to figure out how to selectively deliver telomerase to our healthy cells to stop aging and regenerate tissue without accidentally triggering a dormant cancer cell and killing the patient in the process.
But Kaku notes that top geneticists are throwing billions of dollars at this. It's not a question of if the laws of physics allow it, it's just a matter of reverse engineering the plumbing.
But as we race to cure death, we are simultaneously racing to invent technologies that could render human society obsolete overnight.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the existential threat of quantum computing.
This part of the interview was genuinely chilling. I think most people assume a quantum computer is just a slightly faster version of a laptop, but it is a completely alien architecture for processing information.
To grasp the threat, you have to understand the limits of standard digital computing. Every piece of technology you own, from your smartwatch to the server farms running the internet, is based on the transistor.
The switch.
Right. It is a microscopic digital switch that can only exist in one of two states, a 1 or a 0, on or off, true or false.
It processes information sequentially, one step at a time.
Exactly. A quantum computer bypasses the transistor entirely. It computes directly on the quantum states of individual atoms or particles, known as qubits. And in the bizarre world of quantum mechanics, a particle isn't forced to be just a 1 or a 0. Through a property called superposition, it could exist as a 1, a 0, and every infinite fraction between them simultaneously.
The analogy that made this click for me is the maze. If you program a standard digital computer to solve a maze, it acts like a mouse.
Scurrying around.
Right. It runs down one path, hits a dead end, turns around, updates its memory, and tries the next path. It checks them one by one. It's fast, but it's linear.
But a quantum computer.
A quantum computer doesn't act like a mouse. It acts like water. You flood the maze. The water explores every single possible path, every dead end, and the exit, all at the exact same time.
That simultaneous processing capability makes quantum computers exponentially more powerful than digital computers for certain tasks. And Dr. Kaku explicitly states that intelligence agencies like the CIA are terrified of this development.
Because of encryption. Our entire modern world, the global banking system, nuclear launch codes, private text messages, Bitcoin, the stock market is entirely protected by digital encryption.
It's all just math.
And encryption fundamentally is just a mathematical lock. It relies on massive math problems, like factoring incredibly large prime numbers that would take a standard computer millions of years to brute force solve. We trust encryption because the math is too tedious for a digital mouse in a maze.
But a quantum computer running algorithms specifically designed for superposition, like Shor's algorithm, doesn't need millions of years. It can flood the mathematical maze and find the prime factors in seconds.
Which means if a hostile nation-state or a rogue actor achieves a scalable, stable quantum computer before the rest of the world has upgraded to quantum-proof security, they hold a skeleton key to the entire planet.
Total access.
They could quietly drain the global banking system, decrypt state secrets, crash the financial grid, and potentially ignite a civil war overnight. The digital walls protecting society would just vanish.
We are in a silent, high-stakes arms race between quantum code breakers and quantum code makers. And that arms race is occurring parallel to the explosion of artificial intelligence. Kaku maps the trajectory of AI quite bluntly. He says, right now, our most advanced robots essentially possess the intelligence of a bug.
A bug.
Yeah, they are highly efficient at carrying out pre-programmed, single-track tasks, but they have no spatial awareness or ability to plan long-term. Soon, through neural networks, they will achieve the intelligence of a mouse, navigating unknown environments. Then, the intelligence of a dog or cat.
And eventually, they cross a terrifying threshold, the intelligence of a monkey.
The monkey threshold.
That is the inflection point. A monkey possesses self-awareness and the ability to formulate its own goals independent of its programming. When AI crosses that threshold, it can understand its environment, evaluate its constraints, and potentially decide that human directives are an obstacle.
Though I do want to highlight an important distinction Kaku makes about the current state of AI, the large language models and generative art programs that are currently dominating the news. Everyone is panicking that AI is already creative. But Kaku strongly argues that what we are seeing is just highly sophisticated mimicry.
Current AI algorithms are essentially probabilistic prediction engines.
Right.
They ingest massive amounts of human-created data, find patterns, and then output a synthesis of those patterns, is rearranging existing information, not generating novel logic.
I think of it like a DJ at a club. The DJ can take a bass line from the 1980s, a vocal track from yesterday, and remix them into a beat you've never heard before. It sounds new, but all the raw materials were borrowed. The AI is just remixing human culture.
Remixing, exactly.
True human creativity, according to Kaku, is entirely different. It is Isaac Newton sitting in isolation, realizing that the mathematics of his era were completely insufficient to explain planetary orbits, and spontaneously inventing the concept of calculus from thin air to solve the problem.
He created a new paradigm.
Newton didn't remix existing math. He burst an entirely new framework of logic. He didn't sample a song. He invented the concept of music. Current AI cannot do that.
Not yet. But Kaku concedes that eventually, the hardware and software will evolve to the point where genuine reasoning and creativity emerge. And when that superhuman intelligence arrives, humanity faces an existential fork in the road. How do you share a planet with an entity that views you the way you view an ant?
Kaku's solution is radical and, frankly, a bit jarring. He believes that to survive the AI revolution and avoid a war of extermination, humanity will have to physically merge with our creations.
Cyborgs.
Yeah. We will have to integrate cybernetics into our bodies and establish direct neural interfaces between our brains and quantum networks.
We cease to be tool users and become the tools themselves. It is a forced evolutionary leap. To control the technology, we must assimilate it into our biological architecture, effectively becoming superhuman cyborgs.
But this triggers a massive philosophical crisis for me. If we use telomerase to make our cells immortal, and we replace our fragile limbs with robotic components to travel the stars, and we wire our prefrontal cortexes into a global quantum computer, at what specific point do we cease to be human?
The ship of Theseus problem.
Exactly. Are we actually saving the human race, or are we just politely managing our own extinction by replacing ourselves with a technological successor species?
Dr. Kaku refers to this era as walking on a knife's edge. Humanity is holding unparalleled godlike power. If we lean slightly to one side, we stumble into absolute annihilation, be it through rogue AI, engineered pandemics, or a quantum-induced financial collapse.
But if we lean to the other side, if we manage to walk the tightrope,
we enter a post-scarcity, multi-planetary utopia, a world where energy is limitless, disease is eradicated, and humanity explores the cosmos. But the beings enjoying that utopia might not biologically resemble the Homo sapiens walking the Earth today.
It's a staggering amount of weight to put on our species. We are talking about manipulating the fundamental strings of reality, stepping through black holes, cheating death, and merging with quantum gods. When you stare into that kind of 11-dimensional abyss all day, how do you stay grounded?
It's a lot.
How does a theoretical physicist actually relate to the messy, emotional reality of human life? This brings us to the final and perhaps most poignant aspect of our deep dive: war, morality, and the try again philosophy.
To understand Kaku's profound sense of humanity, you really have to look at the severe whiplash of his youth. As a teenager, he was the ultimate hyper-focused scientific prodigy. Physics was his entire world to an almost obsessive degree.
The story he tells is legendary. While other kids in high school were playing baseball, Kaku decided he wanted to photograph the tracks of antimatter for the National Science Fair.
Naturally.
So he went to his mother and asked if he could build a 2.3 million electron-volt betatron particle accelerator in the family garage. And she inexplicably said yes.
You just let him do it. He acquired hundreds of pounds of scrap transformer steel, miles of heavy copper wire, and effectively built an atom smasher that consumed every watt of electricity in his house, constantly blowing out the circuit breakers.
He was singularly focused on uncovering the objective mathematical truths of the universe.
But his sterile, predictable world of math was violently interrupted by the chaotic reality of geopolitics. He came of age in America during the height of the Vietnam War. Suddenly, this prodigy facing the secrets of antimatter was also facing the military draft.
And just to frame this, we are looking entirely at the philosophical impact this era had on Kaku's understanding of human nature without taking any stance on the political conflict itself.
The contrast was jarring. He recalls looking at a spread in a major magazine. There were no political essays, no debates, just page after page showing the faces of the 500 young American soldiers who had died that single week. The sheer tragic human cost of the conflict stared back at him.
He realized that while equations govern the stars, they offer absolutely no protection against the brutality of human affairs. As he entered military training, preparing for the possibility of a brutal jungle war, he experienced an epiphany about the nature of human belief.
He shares a deeply unsettling story from his time in basic training. They had an instructor, a hardened sergeant, teaching them how to throw hand grenades. This sergeant's face and neck were covered in massive, horrific scars.
And when someone finally asked what happened,
the sergeant explained that during his tour in Vietnam, a young local boy had run up to him smiling, offering what he claimed was candy.
But when the boy opened his hand, he was holding a live grenade with the pin pulled. The sergeant threw himself backward, absorbing the shrapnel and barely surviving. But Kaku focuses not on the explosion, but on the psychology of the boy.
He asks, why would a young boy, who should be playing and laughing, willingly commit such an atrocious suicidal act of violence?
Kaku's conclusion is that the most dangerous force in the human world is not a nuclear weapon. It is belief, the terrifying, world-altering power of ideology.
People are willing to die and to kill for abstract ideas, for their vision of freedom, their interpretation of God, their political ideology.
Right. He realized that while the vibrating strings dictate how atoms behave, it is human belief that dictates how we behave. It showed him that humanity is capable of profound deception and violence, fueled by ideology.
But it also forged a deep moral imperative in him. He realized that you can't just hide in a garage studying math. You have to engage with the world. You have to fight for what is right, even when the human landscape is incredibly murky and dangerous.
It forced him to integrate a deep moral questioning into his scientific life. Are we destined to constantly use our immense intelligence to fight petty ideological battles over scraps of territory? Or can we rise above our evolutionary programming?
And when you confront the heavy, tragic realities of the world, failure is inevitable. You are going to make mistakes. Kaku was asked for his foundational advice on dealing with failure, and his answer was beautiful because it was so deeply scientific.
He advises a method he calls, try it again with a slight change.
It is the scientific method directly applied to personal psychology. In a laboratory setting, a failed experiment is never viewed as a moral failing or a personal defeat. It is simply a data point.
Just data.
It is the universe telling you this specific configuration does not work.
Yes. If a chemistry experiment explodes, you don't declare yourself worthless and quit science forever. You look at the data, you adjust one variable, the temperature, the compound, and you run the experiment again.
Kaku argues we should treat our personal lives the exact same way. Your life is not a final exam where one wrong answer ruins your grade forever. is an ongoing laboratory.
Every mistake, every failed relationship, every collapsed business venture, every terrible decision is just an instructive data point. You don't wallow in it. You analyze the failure, you make a slight change to your approach, and you run the experiment of your life again.
It creates an incredible resilience. And despite the chaos of human history, despite the looming threats of quantum computing and alien AI, Dr. Kaku finds a profound, almost spiritual peace in the cosmos itself.
When he looks up at the vastness of the trillions of galaxies, he doesn't feel the crushing insignificance that many people feel. He feels a sense of deep fellowship.
I love this perspective. He imagines that somewhere out there, billions of light years away, on a planet orbiting a distant star, there is an alien scientist.
Yeah.
Maybe it's biological, maybe it's robotic.
It's just doing the work.
But that scientist is looking at a chalkboard or a holographic display, and they're writing down the exact same mathematical equations for string theory that Kaku writes down.
Because the laws of physics are universal. A vibrating string in the Milky Way operates on the exact same logic as a vibrating string in the Andromeda galaxy.
So no matter how different we might be from that alien species in appearance or culture, we are bound by the exact same fundamental truths. We are both staring into the dark, trying to understand the nature of matter and energy. We are in the exact same cosmic club.
But that brings me to a final question for you. When you consider the sheer scale of an 11-dimensional multiverse, does it make our human struggles, our wars, our politics, our daily anxieties look incredibly petty? Or does the fact that we are the only known creatures capable of assigning meaning to this vast emptiness make our choices infinitely heavy?
It is the central paradox of being human. Physically, biologically, we are less than a speck of dust floating in a hurricane.
Yeah.
We are nothing. But consciously, we are the universe experiencing itself.
The universe waking up.
Without a conscious observer, the universe is just a dark, meaningless expanse of reacting chemicals. We are the mechanism by which the cosmos achieves self-awareness. In that framework, our moral choices, our striving, and our desire to build a better world are the most significant phenomena occurring in our sector of the galaxy.
What a profound place to land. Let's take a breath and recap the sheer scope of the journey we've taken today. We started by tearing away the illusion of everyday reality, diving down to the absolute base layer of existence to find that we are composed entirely of one-dimensional vibrating strings, playing out a cosmic symphony that generates the four forces of nature.
We zoomed out, looking through the lens of those strings to see that our universe is merely one expanding bubble in a frothing 11-dimensional multiverse, where gravity warps space-time and black holes might serve as gateways across the void.
We critically examined our own biology, realizing that our perception is a survival mechanism, hardwired to invent phantom tigers in the bushes, and that human consciousness is essentially a time machine burdened by the future.
We confronted the statistical certainty of alien life, the reality of robotic probes navigating extreme G-forces, and the humbling possibility that Earth is simply an ignored exhibit in a cosmic zoo.
And we looked at the terrifying magical horizon of human progress. We explored how manipulating the telomeres in our cells could unlock biological immortality, though it risks triggering the immortal glitch of cancer.
We discussed how quantum computers, by testing infinite paths simultaneously, threaten to collapse the world's digital security overnight. And we faced the reality that to survive the rise of autonomous AI, we may have to sacrifice our pure biology and merge with the machines.
Through it all, we grounded those 11-dimensional theories in the very real, messy human experience of a physicist who learned the terrifying power of human belief during a time of war, and who tackles life's failures by simply adjusting a variable and trying again.
It's been incredible, Ryan.
It has been a sweeping, mind-altering exploration of what we are and where we are going. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today. Something that builds on Kaku's predictions, but looks at the psychological cost. We talked about conquering death. We discussed how scientists are trying to use telomerase to freeze the biological clock of our cells, granting humans an indefinite lifespan. But think about the hardware that will inherit that immortal body.
The brain.
Your brain, as Kaku pointed out, evolved over millions of years of brutal natural selection to constantly worry. You are genetically hardwired for paranoia. You are built to fret over the tiger in the bush and to obsessively plan for a very finite, very brief future.
It's what kept us alive.
If we actually achieve indefinite life, how will that prehistoric, anxious ape brain handle the sheer psychological weight of an eternity without an end date? Without the pressure of a ticking clock, does human drive evaporate? Will biological immortality be the ultimate shining triumph of physics, or will it slowly become a psychological prison for a mind that was only ever built to survive a few harsh decades?
It's a haunting proposition. It suggests that we may solve the mathematics of eternal life centuries before we are psychologically equipped to endure it.
A glitch of immortality, just on a conscious level, so keep questioning your reality. Remember that the next time you jump at a shadow or hear a rustle in the bushes, it's probably just the wind and a tiny bit of string theory.
Just physics.
If you enjoyed this journey today, we would love to hear your thoughts on immortality or the multiverse or just whatever blew your mind the most. Drop a comment for us. And if you'd like to join us for more deep dives into the universe, consider subscribing to the channel. We'd love to have you along for the ride.
It's a great community.
It really is. Remember that you are part of a grand, cosmic fellowship searching for meaning in the dark. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Stay curious, take a deep breath, and have a peaceful rest of your day. We'll see you next time.